Well, hello. Thank you for joining us. I am Dr. Tanya Breland.
And I am Dr. Erica Leek, and welcome to this on-demand version of our virtual open house, introducing you to the Nurturing Greatness System.
Yeah, so just to tell you a little bit about ourselves, because some of you may be meeting us for the first time, we are the owners of TISO Consulting Group. We provide training and consulting and services to K-12 systems as well as nonprofits and higher ed. Our organization has been committed to students succeeding in school. And we do that through training, we do that through coaching, we do that through consulting. Our background, we have been in education between the two of us for over 50 years. And we have worked at the elementary, the middle, and the high school level. We've worked in leadership at the local level as well as at the state level. So both of us actually connected with one another, working for our State Department of Education. We both held leadership positions at the State Department. We have deep knowledge in education from a broad range. We've done a lot with professional learning. We've done a lot with curriculum. We've done a lot with leadership. We've done a lot with policy, um, educational equity, and the list goes on. Dr. Erica, what else should we add to that list?
So, for those of you who don't know, TESO, TESO, actually stands for Teach Educators and Scholars Organization. And as Dr. Tanya talked about, we support K to 12, but we support in like different ways. There's a variety of services. And the Nurturing Greatness System is really a culmination of our experience. It represents our expertise and some of the things that we know works through research and also experience. And we're really excited to share it with you.
We are. So let's get started. I'm going to share the screen here, and you should be able to see us here on the screen. Hopefully, we're going to make sure that both of us are showing. So this is the Nurturing Greatness System. We're going to give you a vision for how we cultivate brilliance in students or in scholars, as you'll hear us reference as we go through this presentation. So we want to thank you for being a part of our audience and for um, joining us today. We want to just say this right off the bat. Not only are we thanking you, but we are also inviting you to apply to be a pilot. We are currently accepting applications for schools and districts that are interested in the Nurturing Greatness system and in piloting it in your school and or in your district. So let's get into what it is so you know what it is that you're potentially signing up for. So I'll start by sharing a little bit about ourselves. So on the picture on the left is me. I'm about 5 or 6 years old, and the picture on the right is Dr. Erica. And so I'm going to stop the share so we can kind of share a little bit about our background and why this is something that is really important to you, to you, to us. Nurturing greatness didn't just start a few years ago. It really started when we were very young. So when I was around 5 or 6 years old, my parents divorced, and I ended up living with my father, who later remarried, and I had a stepmother. Both of them raised my siblings and me. When I was in first grade, I had an amazing teacher, Mrs. Betty Clark. I'll never forget her because she is the reason why I went into education. But Mrs. Clark saw something in me, and she not only saw a young girl who was kind of vulnerable, and I know that because I found her as an adult, and she said that's something she remembered that she needed to hold me close. She didn't just see a vulnerable little girl, she saw a little girl who was intelligent, who had leadership skills. She saw the leader in me. And while I can't imagine what exactly she was seeing, she saw that and she said, I want to cultivate that. And she cultivated it by giving me opportunities to lead. I remember her leaving for a sick leave. And while she was out, she put me in charge of helping the substitute know what to do in the classroom, where things were in the classroom, how we did things in the classroom. That's a lot of responsibility for a 6-year old, but she entrusted me with that because she saw the leader that was in me. And I'm glad that she did. Because of that, that was a gift that was cultivated throughout the years in my family, in my church, and in some of the classroom and schooling experiences that I had. But I have to say, not all of my schooling experiences were like Mrs. Betty Clark. In fact, most of them were not like hers. But she laid such a strong foundation and showed me something about myself that that carried me through many, many years of schooling and into my adulthood. So much so that I've been able to lead in many organizations, lead on boards that I sit on. And all of that was because of this one first grade teacher. But students should not have to wait for that perfect teacher to be able to see them and to cultivate the gifts that are inside of them, to create environments for them to thrive as individuals. They should not have to wait year after year for that perfect teacher to come along. It should just be a part of the system. It should be embedded in a way that every child gets to see themselves, to grow as individuals, and to become the leaders or whatever it is that they are gifted to be.
Yeah, I love that. I so agree with you. I wish that the education system were full of Miss Clarks, because I think stories like mine would we wouldn't hear about them so often. So, as Tanya said, the picture that you saw, I am the little girl on the right. And one of the things that has struck me as an educator was how systems, the way that they are designed, very often are kind of intentional about outcomes. My story begins with my dad's and my mom's. And so my father, Black male in the 50s, city of Philadelphia, was literally counseled out of school. He was told, at the time, when you finish ninth grade, when you finish 10th grade, you get a diploma at the end of every grade. When he got his 10th grade diploma, he was told by the school, by a counselor in the school that, you really don't have to go on any further. You don't need to return. And so he did it. And then my mom, she was in a different city. She was in New York City, but my mom was orphaned, and she found herself she and her siblings, they were in foster homes, and so that system actually kind of signaled a like a special education kind of classification. And so because of that, there were opportunities that my mother was not able to kind of take advantage of. When we came along, they moved us into a community, they moved us out of the city. So my parents meet, and they have children, and then they move us to a suburb that had been, I don't think it had been integrated for 10 years by the time that they moved into the community. And so while it was sort of the promise of integration, that there were, a better school system, that system had in its design kind of a way to marginalize African American students. And so my parents kind of found themselves fighting through the length of my K to 12 experience to, you know, get me into, gifted programs, and even to keep my brothers out of special ed. Like my parents were like, I don't think this is necessary, because they were very sensitive to what the system had and had not provided for them. I didn't have any Miss Clarks, as Dr. Tanya was talking about. I didn't have, someone who kind of cultivated brilliance outside of my parents, and so what we dare to imagine with the Nurturing Greatness system is schools that design learning to cultivate brilliance. That is, the system is designed to cultivate brilliance and cultivate identity, so that students and our scholars have a really solid sense of who they are. The schools also are designed to develop gifts. So you don't get to your second year of college and realize that, oh, I'm actually pretty good at acting or math or whatever that gift is, right? They also ensure rigor. We don't reserve rigor for gifted and talented, right? Everybody, the system is designed so that every student meets rigor and relevance because we empower them to solve real world problems. And they really get an opportunity to really think about the ways that they could be a part of a solution. It also, and in doing so, it creates opportunities for societal impact. And because they are the architects of these solutions, it inspires creativity and innovation. Imagine a school system that has all of these things as a part of its system. And that is, those are some of the features of the Nurturing Greatness System.
Yeah, it is. And we want to tell you about a little boy named Jabril. So just imagine this little boy. He's good-natured. He's kind of bored sometimes in school, and he's quiet and he's witty, and he's not really connected to the adults, really, because he's not a troublemaker. He doesn't get in trouble. He doesn't rise to the level of attention that some of his classmates might have. He is multilingual. He tends to be rather average in terms of his academic outcomes, but his efforts are pretty accepted because, again, he is not a discipline issue. He does, however, get redirected for drumming on his table or on his desk, and he really enjoys listening to music. So we want to share a little bit more about Jabril.
So imagine that. Now think about Jabril's profile, right? Think about how many of you know a Jabril. Imagine that Jabril is in a system where the staff actually takes an interest in that drumming, right? They say, like, what's that all about? What are
Right.
you hearing, right? They ask him about his musical aspirations when he reveals that he just hears it, right? Imagine a staff that actually says, you know what? How about we have a learning project where music is a part of what you do, right? How about they connect him? Imagine the staff that connects him to a local percussionist, because this is an interest. So why wouldn't we do that, right? Imagine that they intentionally connect academics to his musical interest, because Jabril is drumming and he hears this music. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to teach skills and concepts through his musical abilities. And imagine that the staff has the interest and the skill to create his learning experiences that celebrate even his multicultural background and identity. Imagine a staff that takes this disengaged, right, disinterested Jabril, who's drumming all the time, and creates experiences that really tap into what interests and motivates him.
Right. And so, because they do that, imagine that this little boy, Jabril, or any other child that is like a Jabril, gets to not only understand, but really realizes the asset of his cultural identity. And for him, as he's learning his academics, he has an opportunity to develop a project that ties what he's learning academically into his interests and connects to his community. And so, in connecting with his community, Jabril decides that he's going to create a festival to celebrate music. So you know, using his academics skills and the content that he's learning in academics, he learns how to collect data. He learns what to do with that data, how to analyze that data, and how to identify other groups in his community that are going to join him in this festival. He learns how to communicate via writing, via oral communication with community leaders to help him in developing this. He's learning negotiation skills and other soft skills to be able to um, collaborate with those in his community that can help him make this happen. He studies acoustic features, and so now he's using his science and technology to understand how does sound travel? How can he create a festival and have the kind of sound, excuse me, sound features that amplify the the sound for the environment that he's in. Um, and he also has an opportunity to use some of his math skills as he's researching and understanding costs and fundraising and what to do with all of those numbers. All of that is a part of his experience in school.
I love this. And imagine,
Yes.
right? So he's engaged in all this. And so what the teachers that he would engage with, who we would call greatness coaches. Imagine that these greatness coaches facilitate goals for content mastery. So, as he's doing all this, he's planning and he's engaging in his community and musical traditions, but there are goals for content mastery. It is a part of his experience. Imagine that these coaches, also, sort of, hold him accountable for staying on track for this project, for this learning design. Imagine that they also connect him with fellow students who have similar interests and gifts and motivations, and they collaborate in some areas. Imagine these greatness coaches also, provide him with autonomy, with support. So he's not out there on his own, but he's got the support, right? And the facilitation of these coaches, and they support him in even creating his own instrumental piece. Like he has and all of this became about because someone cared to say, what's that drumming about? Let's really
Right.
tap into what that means, right?
Right.
So imagine that this experience, we have this for this student who was previously disengaged because we know that the current problem of our system is not that kids are disengaged or it, it's they don't lack the ability. They are disengaged because their learning fails to recognize their brilliance. And the nurturing greatness system redesigns learning so that every scholar can thrive regardless of their interests, regardless of their background, regardless of their motivations. Every scholar can thrive.
Yeah. And that's really important to point out. I also want to point out that, Dr. Erica and I, in the work that we do through Teach Educators and Scholars Organization, we've had opportunities to go into classrooms in at hundreds of classrooms. And these are classrooms in urban settings, in suburban settings, in rural settings. And we have seen students who are disengaged at every level. We walk through classrooms that look very much like they looked when we were students and when our parents were students, and probably when our grandparents were students. And so we know that there is an epidemic of boredom that's happening in schools with the swift growing technology that students are exposed to on a regular basis. And even the most recent report that came out that students are not reading at a level because of the amount of time they spend on social media. They're not reading at the levels that they should be. We know students are disengaged. They're not enjoying school the way that it should be. And some of that is a design issue. It's the way that school is designed. It's designed the way that it was designed when we were in school. And so we have designed Nurturing Greatness to change what school looks like for students. I'm going to share the screen again. So our system is actually grounded in the science of learning and development. It's and also other interdisciplinary research that's out there. It's a school design model that really nurtures the inherent brilliance that students bring to school. So I'm speaking about something that we greatly believe in, and it's built on four design concepts: on inquiry, on real world problem solving, on identity development, and on strength based learning. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we mean when we talk about that, each of these. But this is what Nurturing Greatness is built on.
And here's our belief about our scholars that's at the core of this system. Every scholar is brilliant.
Yes.
Every single one. Not just the kids and gifted and talented, not just the kids that, are fortunate enough to graduate and who work their way to graduation, right? Every scholar, regardless of what is happening with them, around them, to them, for them, every scholar is brilliant and everybody has gifts, not just the kids in music, not just the athletes, right? Every scholar has gifts. And it
Both
is,
of us. Oh, sorry.
yes, go ahead. Go
Go ahead.
ahead.
No, no. I'll
Go
let
ahead.
you finish. I was going to say, both of us have had kids who were in the gifted and talented program in school. And while they were in those gifted and talented programs, they were pulled out of their classrooms. They were given these amazing opportunities to solve problems and to delve into inquiry-based learning. They were collaborating with their peers. But the kids in the who were not in the gifted and talented program did not have that experience. Not
Yeah.
unless they happen to have a Mrs. Betty Clark type of a teacher who said, hey, let me build and design instruction around the brilliance that I believe these students bring into the classroom. And so, with that, I'll let Dr. Erica go to the next, finish up what she was going to say.
Oh, it's fine, but because I love that you brought that up because not only did we have our own children who are identified as gifted and talented, but we've also had students who were not, right? And we found the gifts that they had, right? We found kids who were not engaged in other places. I remember this one kid in particular. Another teacher came into now he was always like up and moving and coordinating things. He's such a gift of leadership and he was dynamic and charismatic and he just did some really interesting things in the classroom because he had the opportunity to. And I remember a teacher coming into my classroom. I don't even remember why they were there, but I remember her saying like, that kid never says anything in my classroom.
Ah,
Ever anything. I can't get him to talk or anything like that. Now, what is the difference between it's the same kid, right? In my classroom, he's moving around, he's coordinating things, he's, doing all this really wonderful stuff. He's the model student, he's participating and all this stuff. And in that other classroom, he's not, right?
right.
So, what happens, right? So, I just believe that all kids had something in them. And so, my job which is what we believe about nurturing greatness, is to design the environment where their brilliance is recognized, developed, and nurtured. And
Right.
so, what happens when it is a part of the system? We all do that, right? So here's the shift. This is really sort of at the basis of sort of the movement from a nurturing greatness from a system that's not a nurturing greatness system to one that is. So here's the shift. What nurturing greatness is a way of designing learning so that students are engaged, challenged, and growing. This is
Yes.
the system. This is a systemic shift. Nurturing greatness is not a program or initiative, right? We just sort of drop it in the midst of these other things or pull it out. This is the entire system. It is
Right.
not a program or initiative. It is not a curriculum and it's not an add-on. This
Right.
is a systemic shift where learning is designed so that kids are engaged, challenged, and growing.
Absolutely. So just to kind of give it to you in a more succinct way, the Nurturing Greatness system, as you see here on the screen, is a coherent, integrative, and interdependent model for school design that nurtures the inherent brilliance of every student. That's what nurturing greatness is at its core. And we mentioned that it's grounded in interdisciplinary research, and in particular, this research really operationalizes the nurturing greatness system. And so when you look at the research that's here on the screen, we're looking at the science of learning and development. It is grounded in the science of learning and development and some of those other interdisciplinary research theories, if you will, that we also draw from as we were developing the nurturing greatness system would include the constructivist learning theory, sociocultural learning theory, culturally relevant pedagogy, self-determination theory, and strengths science. And all of this we can provide to you in writing if you're looking, if you want to know more about each of these in greater detail.
And so here is the principles. Here are really sort of like I'm not an architect, so excuse me if I mix metaphors, but here's the foundation of the blueprint,
Yeah.
right? These are our seven principles. So we took the research, we also took what worked in our experience, we also took what we sort of knew as, I don't want to say best practices, but just effective, what works with kids. And so here are the seven things that we realized as as a culmination of both of our experience and the research that is necessary in a system. One, personal introspection, right? We know the importance of reflection. Also, strength-based relationships. So we'll go back to Jabril, when a teacher says or when a coach says, "Hey, what's that drumming about?" If the relationship is not good, then the answer will not be authentic, right? So we know the importance of strength-based relationships. We also know that the how essential gift cultivation is. It is our responsibility to sort of really nurture and cultivate those gifts, and also empowering instruction and engaging learning experiences. Dr. Tanya talked about sort of the epidemic of just boredom. And so, what does it look like for us to really provide and to be accountable for providing engaging learning experiences? Also, innovation and creativity. If you leave kids to their own design, they will create something, whether it's really productive or even destructive, but something will be created. And so, how do we take the natural curiosity that comes with childhood and allow them to use that in their learning experiences?
Right.
And also contextualize application. Ultimately, what are we educating them to do? How
Right.
can they apply their concepts and skills that they learn, like to what? And so these are the seven principles of the Nurturing Greatness system.
Yeah, and I just want to add that these principles are for the adults. This shifts the mindset of the adults. And so when you think about a student like Jabril and that contextualized application, Jabril's learning specifically helped him with the project that he had identified for that marking period or that time period. And as he developed his festival, his innovation and creativity was there. You saw his gifts being cultivated. Dr. Eric and I had an opportunity. I'm going to just stop to share for a moment. Recently, we were talking with a gentleman who who kind of reminds us a little bit of Jabril, and he was sharing that he often drummed on his desk. And the response from his teacher was that there's something wrong with him and that he has a nervous condition. And she sent him out for detention. Now, fortunately, his mother was an educator. Turns out this little boy who was a distraction and a problem and needed to be disciplined for his drumming, this same little boy became a world-renowned musician, and that is what he does for a living. He plays multiple instruments. He has played in bands with world-renowned artists. And it started when he was a young child and he just had this gift, but it was his family that cultivated the gift. School didn't cultivate it, but what if it had? What
Yeah.
if that was his experience? And I think that that's something that we have to think about. But the Nurturing Greatness system allows for that. In fact, it is embedded in the Nurturing Greatness system. So I'm gonna share
Yeah,
this.
I love that. As you're sharing the screen, just the suggestion that a child that's drumming must have a nervous condition.
Right.
Just a suggestion of that from an authority figure is like unthinkable.
Mhm.
Right. And so when we think about the strength-based relationship and we think about the gift cultivation, imagine how powerful it would have been had that same teacher said, "Oh, you're drumming a lot. Let's think about, music for you. Like I wonder, how we can use music in your learning." And so here's the promise of the Nurturing Greatness system. Dr. Tanya is going to walk us through this, but
Yeah.
this is what we're really excited about.
Right. So students who are part of the Nurturing Greatness system, they walk away knowing who they are. So they have a strong sense of their identity, their social identity, their identity as students, all of that. Like they know who they are. They know the kind of learners that they are. They know what they enjoy about school. They see themselves as mathematicians and musicians and entrepreneurs and scientists and technologists and the list goes on, writers and creatives. They really know who they are because they've had opportunities to really explore that. And their greatness coaches have worked with them. Remember, the greatness coaches are the teachers, have worked with them to develop their gifts so they know what their purpose is. I work a lot with adults who have no idea who they are or what they're designed to do. And I'm going to stop the share, who have no idea what they're designed to do. And they get halfway through life and they're like, what is my purpose? Well, imagine students not having to wait until they're in their 40s to understand what their purpose is. But this is a part of the schooling experience that they have. They're problem solvers. So everything that they're doing allows them to solve problems, to think critically. And because they're thinking critically, they can innovate and create. So we gave you the example of Jabril, who, as he is learning, has an opportunity to create his own piece of music, which is masterful. You think about like the young Beethovens out there back, from years ago, who was creating masterpieces at very young ages because somebody saw the gifts that were in him. Same kind of thing in the Nurturing Greatness system. And it's not just musicians, that's just one example. But we're talking about students who are leaders. They're leading in their communities, they're leading in their schools, much like a Mrs. Betty Clark saw in me. The Nurturing Greatness system ensures that students are developed as leaders, and that they are making an impact and making contributions to the world. And those contributions are solving problems in their society, solving problems in their own communities, even solving problems that we see globally. And these students are ready for their futures. That's the promise of the Nurturing Greatness system, and that's what we believe is very powerful. We want to talk a little bit more about our theory of change, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we want to just at least mention it so that you understand it. Because we believe that if schools redesign their structures, their practices, and their learning environments to recognize and to cultivate the brilliance of every scholar, then the scholars will graduate with identity, with intellectual mastery, with creativity, and agency necessary to solve real world problems and lead lives of purpose and impact.
So we just want to talk a little bit about sort of the traditional approach versus the nurturing greatness approach when it comes to teaching and learning. And so Dr. Tanya said a little earlier that sort of the way that we're educating our students looks a lot like the way we were educated, which looks a lot like the way our parents were. And so this slide here, like you can see, like this is really the system right now. So we have social studies, we have ELA, we have science, we have all of these subjects. They are taught separately. And they're kind of taught in really much the same approach. So there are some lessons, some kind of way. There are some instructional activities that might provide practice. And then there are assessments that very often come in the way of one of three ways. It's either a quiz, a test, or there may be a project, right?
Right.
But it's pretty much the same throughout, like whatever, regardless of the subject, of the content area. Sometimes social studies talks to ELA. Sometimes science works with math, but very often they don't. And so if you take a skill like, using data to develop a claim, you actually do that in every single content area, but we don't really sort of talk about kind of like the cross collaboration or the interdisciplinary approach to developing a claim based on the evidence or the proof or whatever it is that you have or the data that you have. I remember when I was teaching in a high school, and it just so happened that I was teaching English. I was a high school English teacher. It just so happened that our the supervisor for English happened to be very good friends and collaborators with the science supervisor. So for one of our meetings, and this was very early on when I first started teaching, he brought the English teachers and the science teachers together in a meeting. We
Mhm.
had no idea what to do. Like when I think about it now, it's actually pretty cool. But in that moment, in that meeting, we were like, why are we all here together? What is this? English has nothing to do with science because I was a high school teacher and that's what I thought. But imagine if we had the practice of collaboration, right? Imagine we have when you think about the one of the nurturing greatness principles of personal introspection and innovation and creativity. Like imagine if I had the mindset to combine those, to have that, I would really been able to do some really powerful work with the science teachers, which I did eventually. But I had to get over this idea that these contents, like that traditional system where we have these really defined borders of learning, I had to kind of break through that. And so here is the nurturing greatness. This is the breakthrough of from the traditional system. The nurturing greatness system, as you can see right in the center there, there's that greatness centered learning design. It is integrated. It cultivates identity and gifts and content mastery and real world impact. It does it all. When you think about the inner ring there, we have the academic domain. So we have the humanities, we have scientific and experimentation thinking. We have global communication and leadership. We have health and wellness. We have all these areas of all these academic domains. And then the outer ring, these are our five independent drivers, right? So these drivers amplify the nurturing greatness system. These drivers are, we have identity and self-knowledge. We've talked about that's part of the promise of the nurturing greatness system because it is intentionally a piece of it. We have innovation and creativity. We have intellectual mastery. This isn't either or. This is not either or. This is a part of the system. We have contribution and impact, and then we have agency and future readiness, right? So that the future isn't something that we think about in 12th grade, right? This is something that we continuously prepare for throughout the engagement with the system. So this is the integrated and the interdependent design, the learning design of the nurturing greatness system. Tanya, did you want to add anything to that?
Um, no, I think you've captured it. Of course, if anybody has questions, we certainly encourage you to reach out to us at any point with any of the questions. So we'll just kind of just touch on some of these five drivers that encompass the outer ring there. So that identity and self-knowledge piece is really important for students to understand who they are and how they show up in the world and how they show up as learners. And so this is a part of the experience that they have while they're in school. That intellectual mastery piece, remember we talked about the how our own children were in gifted and talented. The idea here is that every child is gifted and talented. And if they're gifted and talented, we can support them in mastering anything intellectually that's presented to them. That innovation and creativity piece is really important. And you've heard us talk about that when we gave the example of Jabril, but in any situation with any student. So when I was a classroom teacher, it was important for me. I was doing nurturing greatness without having a name for it, and so my classroom experiences were interdisciplinary. Students were using the inquiry-based approach in an ELA and or social studies classroom, which is what I taught, and so that approach allowed them to be creative in the product that they wanted to show and demonstrate the kind of learning and the intellectual mastery that they had engaged in during working in my classroom. We mentioned that students will be solving problems. That's so that they can make a contribution and that's so that they can make an impact in society. That's critically important because many times you've heard this question. If you're an educator, you've heard this question, what do I need to learn this for? Kids ask that question. They asked it when I asked it when I was a kid. I had students at first asking me those questions, but as I tweaked my own teaching, ability, that no longer was a question that students were asking because they understood that what they were learning had some application. And that's the idea with the Nurturing Greatness system, that it's going to have application in the real world where they actually are solving problems that can make an impact, whether it has something to do with the environment or something to do with a social issue that they've seen or something in their own communities that they just want to solve. There's an opportunity through Nurturing Greatness for them to be able to do that and to have agency. And it informs what they want to do in their future. So as they are preparing for their post-secondary opportunities, they already have an idea of where they can go and what they can do because they've been exposed to it, they've explored it, and they've engaged with it all throughout their schooling in the Nurturing Greatness system.
So here is sort of the signature moment, not sort of, this is the signature moment of the greatness of the Nurturing Greatness system, the greatness defense. The greatness defense, if you think about a doctoral dissertation or, defending your master's thesis or defending or standing up and presenting the culmination of some kind of project or research, this is akin to that. This is the greatness defense, where at the end of their time with in a nurturing greatness system, students answer, who am I? What have I learned? And how have I applied my gifts? And so in this moment, in this experience, in this defense, they literally defend their greatness and they express like who they are. Who am I? Who do I understand myself to be in this moment as a result of the problems that I've solved? And, here's the evidence of my intellectually, this is the evidence of my learning. This is what I've learned. And this is how I've applied my gifts because they've been cultivated. And
Mhm.
this is how I've applied that. And here's the impact that I've made. And this is the vision and the plan for my future. And so the greatness defense gives them an opportunity literally to defend their greatness to their community, families and educators and fellow classmates. Like they really get in that moment to say, this is who I am, this is what I've learned, and this is how I have applied these gifts that have been cultivated.
Yes. And so we want to share a little bit about some of the features of the learning experience that students will have. And as you see here on the screen, they will be engaged in leading their own conferences. So most of us are accustomed to the parent-teacher conference, but imagine students are the ones. They are standing before their parents and their family members and sharing what it is that they have been learning, the goals that they've set for themselves, how they've applied that learning, the progress that they're making, all of that. But they also have opportunities to present in general because we're using an inquiry-based approach and a problem-solving approach to learning. They have opportunities to share on a regular basis and to be in front of audiences, which actually gives them soft skills, skills that they're going to need beyond their schooling experiences. They will have choice and they'll have voice in the learning that they have. It's all experiential learning as well. It's greatness-centered learning. That's what we call greatness-centered learning. It's personalized for them. It's collaborative for them. They're collaborating with their greatness coaches, supporting their own self-paced learning, and they're engaging in this interdisciplinary learning all throughout their schooling. So they're making connections and applying knowledge in areas that perhaps we did not have those opportunities to do when we were students because they are solving problems that make a difference in society. That's part of their experience as learners.
And so if those are the scholars' learning experience, we just want to share with you the educators and the leaders' experiences with nurturing greatness. So the educators and leaders of schools and districts that are part of the nurturing greatness system or adopt the nurturing greatness system, they receive ongoing embedded professional learning and support. And we really want to emphasize ongoing embedded professional learning and support, meaning we won't just sort of give you a manual and you're on your own. Like there's real, we have for if you're interested in fall 2026 implementation, then late spring and summer training. So there'll be, you'll be part of a cohort where you'll receive training. There's also summer leadership training in the fall in the fall of 2026 for the summer, and also next summer in the fall for the fall of 2027 implementation. There's also training during professional development days. You know, every district just about at school, we have professional development days. So we have the opportunity to provide training during those days. There's also coaching for individual and small groups. And then we also have professional learning community. So there are several different avenues for that ongoing embedded professional learning and support. And we really want to make sure that our that are partners in this, the pilot districts that take this on and decide we need change, decide that, and we want to have something different for our students, that you feel supported. So here is what's next. One, apply to become a pilot district. And in our materials, along with this presentation, along with this virtual open house, you will see a link for additional information. You can also contact us for more information. If you're not quite sure, there's a step between, applying for to become a pilot district. You can reach out to us for more information. We also suggest strongly that you assess your system for change. So what are the areas that you are ready for change? Some of us were ready yesterday. Some of us are realizing that I think there needs to be a change. And some of us are trying to decide the extent to which change is needed. But you are unhappy with your outcomes. You realize that there are outcomes that are falling into patterns, or that there are outcomes that have been persistent, and you've tried everything. And what we are suggesting is that you try the Nurturing Greatness system, because we know that you will receive the outcomes for all of your students for which you search.
And as a pilot district, you will become a part of a cohort. So all of the districts that are piloting will be a part of the same cohort, where there will be an opportunity to exchange ideas with one another, to provide feedback, and to do some professional learning collaboratively with other districts who are going through this process alongside with you. We'll also be partnering with an evaluator who will come in and study the Nurturing Greatness implementation process. And that process, as well as the implementation of it and everything that goes along with all the training, the outcomes eventually, as we measure student outcomes by year 2, all of that information will also be studied. So you'll become a part of, the cohort will be a part of this overall study. So that we are able to collect information. You will be on the ground floor of making suggestions and recommendations for how the system can be tweaked to meet the needs, the best meet the needs of all of your learners. And so we're really excited about this Nurturing Greatness system, because we believe it is a game changer in education. We have shared this with a number of leaders in the education world who have provided us with amazing feedback. And that has helped us to be able to develop something that we believe will change the future of education. Why not be on the ground floor of that? We invite you to contact us at nurturinggreatness.info. You can contact us. The information we will make sure we have on the screen and we'll provide for you. But we would love for you to be able to partner with us in this pilot and be a part of our very first cohort. We're looking forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions, please contact us. We're happy to meet with you one-on-one and to share additional information with you. But again, thank you for joining us for this presentation, and we look forward to hearing from you.